Welcome to the 0+1 podcast.
Welcome back to the 0+1 podcast. I am your host, Hayden Wade, and today we have a special guest, Neil. He's going to go through it, introduce himself a little bit, and we'll dive in from there.
Yeah, so I'm a software engineer in working for a logistics company, and yeah, I've been in the industry for like 5 years now. And yeah, any other deep dives you wanted me to go in before because I know you wanted me to get going on like my story of kind of how I got into,
maybe let's
software
just dive in, like your journey, what that look like.
Sure.
When did this all start?
So when I was in high school, I played video games a lot, and I liked video games, and I was really curious how they were made, which led me to learn about software and about programming languages. And I did a little bit of digging into like BASIC and C++, but I didn't really go too far.
Okay.
At the time, I just knew I wanted to do something with computers.
Right.
I wasn't sure what that would be, whether that's graphic design. At the time, I didn't know a ton about programming and how that could be a job and all that. And then I think it was after my junior year, my cousin who had a computer science degree was just like, hey, what are you going to do when you go to college? And he's just like, look into computer science. And then that definitely got the ball rolling.
That's awesome.
And I definitely would not be where I'm at today without my cousin kind of giving me that little push.
Dude, that's super cool.
And it was my cousin that I really looked up to.
Yeah.
So that was he was for sure the catalyst that just got me going in this direction. So then I, finish high school, go through the whole ordeal of getting into a college.
Okay.
And I aimed at getting into a college, since I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, that had a variety, had a lot of options in terms of what they offered at the school. So when I went to college, I went to St. Cloud State.
Okay.
And I did a bunch of art classes and a bunch of computer science classes. And looking back, the one thing that I think is super funny is that I set myself being I'm gonna do computer science.
Yeah.
There was no, looking back, there was no failure. Not failure. There was a lot of failure.
There was just no.
There's no other option.
Yeah. Right.
I just was this is what I'm doing. I'm trying to do this.
Straight from the path at all.
Yeah, and I didn't realize until after that I was just super stubborn.
Okay.
And that's probably another thing to kind of key into is that I did not succeed right away. I think in my first
In what sense?
So I failed classes in computer science. It didn't click right away.
So it was something you really had to work for.
Yeah, there's a few things I had to work for. So the first time I took data structures.
Sure.
The first data structures class, which by that point I think it was 4 or 5 classes into computer science.
Okay.
So I think I was a class away from having enough of the computer science classes done to try to get into the major and get approved for that.
Sure.
And that first time I did that class, it just way over my head. It didn't make any sense. It took a lot of energy just to get the labs done and stuff, and I didn't do well on tests.
Okay.
Mind you, they also had a lot of the tests were writing code out on pad and paper.
Sure.
And which to me still baffles me that it's actually a thing that they do.
So what
in school.
So you said you took several computer science classes prior to data structures. What were those classes? Did you do any coding in those?
Yeah, so the first one was Intro to Computer Science.
Okay.
So that was a lot of JavaScript, and it kind of you did a lab or two doing hardware engineering stuff.
Okay.
So learning about AND OR gates and stuff like that.
Sure.
Boolean logic. And then, we did a lot of programming in terms of we did a Monty Hall project.
Okay.
Kind of stuff like that. And I wrote it out where, you have each door, and I wrote a function for each door that was the same as every other one. It just referenced different things.
Yeah.
And looking back, I'm oh, I could have just changed the parameter passing to the function and dramatically reduced my code.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. So did the intro, did a computer science 220, I think that one was hardware. We did a 201, which was C++ programming. And then 301 was like C++, but like on steroids, like doing all the data structure stuff, like learning how to make linked lists, learning how to use queues and stacks, all that. We're like writing the code for them and then how do you apply them.
Sure.
And so it was that was the first class where it was like kind of that weed out class where
everybody drops.
Not everybody drops, but like 60 people start, and then after like 2 weeks, there's only like 30 people.
Okay.
And then, as the semester goes down, you probably get down to like 20 to 25.
Okay. And your major was computer science.
Yeah. And at this time, no. At this time, it wasn't, but what I was going for.
What was it at this time?
Undeclared.
Undecided?
Yeah. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do, but I was undeclared.
Okay. Because the reason I asked was like, you mentioned some like hardware stuff.
Yeah.
Which made me think, okay, computer engineering or software engineering versus computer science, kind of like that. But
I think they did that so that students could get a taste of the hardware side. In terms of like the physical hardware, because we did have computer engineering as well, and you could go that route if you really enjoyed that. But anyway, so long story short, there was some failure early on, and I just kind of was like, I just stuck to it. And at the time, I didn't question what I was doing. I just kept pushing forward. And then, like looking back, I was just like, oh my god, I failed like, I don't know, probably like 2 or 3 classes.
Okay.
Because I also failed discrete math. That was also like
that was a tough class.
That was a really tough class. Yeah. That was one of those classes where I was just like I would do, how I phrase this, like the first time I went through, I got halfway through the semester, like acing everything, and then I hit one section and just didn't understand it, and that section roadblocked me for the rest of the semester, and then it just went downhill. I failed that class twice.
Did you stay with the class? Like, if you knew you were failing, did you stay with it all the way through?
Yeah.
Or did you just stop showing up to class?
No, I stuck with it.
Okay.
So a lot of the times, like, there's like that withdraw point, and most of the times, by the time, like, I made it far enough in that by the time I realized I was gonna fail, or like I was at risk of failing, it was already too late. I couldn't withdraw.
Sure.
I mean, I could withdraw, but I was just throwing money down the drain and wasting my time.
You might as well sit in class and learn it, and then take it. You're going to be that much better the second time through.
Exactly. So I just stuck through both those classes. The computer science one, like, just that first one was tough, and then the second time through, it was just a breeze. A part of it was, like, the first time I did it was I think my second semester in college. And so, like, actually, it had been my third, but I just was not in a good, like, I wasn't the best student, I will definitely say. And early on in my college career, there's a lot of distractions, and just I wasn't focused. And that all kind of changed once I got an internship. Okay. So I did an internship at...
Okay. All right. Quick question. Yeah. Before you go into this. Yeah. How did you stay motivated to like, you said looking back on it, you failed a lot. Yeah. Like, did you just not realize that in the moment? So like, you didn't really lose motivation in going for computer science? Kinda, yeah. Okay.
So like, it was just like I was too stubborn that I was sticking with my path. Like, and when I fail a lot is like I failed one computer science course, but most of the other stuff that I was constantly struggling with and failing was math. Oh, okay. Like, I failed Calc 1. I failed discrete math twice. Yeah. I failed Calc 2 the first time.
Math's tough.
Like,
that's usually like what weeds people out.
Yeah, and there was a lot of people that I knew that would be like, they would start computer science and they'd be like, oh, I don't want to do all the math, so they'd switch over to information systems, and like they would do half of the programming classes and they'd do a bunch of business classes, and then when they would graduate, they'd get the same. They would be up for the same jobs as other computer science students, and like I found that very frustrating. Yeah. Because it was people legitimately saying, I don't want to do this hard thing and this math. Right. And then switching over to information systems and then being offered, similar jobs for same pay.
You could have breezed through college.
Yeah. And
with like half the effort.
I could have, but like I didn't really want to do that. Yeah. To me, well, for one, it pissed me off when people did that, so like sure. I found if I did that, I'd be very hypocritical. So like I wasn't gonna do it.
See, I could see, but because I went for software engineering, if I weren't first, I'd probably never go back to college. That's a different time for a different topic. But I'd probably do computer science, it'd still give me the job I have now.
Yeah.
Just less math.
Sure.
And like I didn't really care about the hardware side. Like some of it's fun. Like I did a lot of.
Wait, you said you did software engineering.
Yeah.
You mean computer or like?
No, at my school it's called software.
Oh, okay. So, but it was basically computer engineering.
Yeah. So I probably half of my courses were electrical engineering.
Sure.
Another half were computer science or specific software engineering.
Sure. Yeah, like my school was only like 30 credits difference between computer science
Okay.
and computer engineering.
Okay.
You had to do like the physics 2.
Okay.
Which I actually did anyway, which is the funniest part. And you had to do a bunch of other hardware stuff, but and like a term project. But long story short, like even despite failure, specifically in a lot of the math,
right.
I just was very, very stubborn and just kept going on the path I was on.
Sure. So then you're talking about how you got this internship.
Yeah. So I got the internship. Had to have been after, it was midway through my junior year.
Okay.
So by that time I was into my, I think I just finished, I just redone that 301 class that I'd failed in the spring prior.
Sure.
I just finished that class, and then, so it's funny too because when consulting first came to campus, like they were almost viewed as like this very, like is this legit or is this sketch?
Okay.
kind of job. And so,
like, were they like selling stuff that didn't seem real, or like?
Well, no. So they put posters up for. So the job was for $12 an hour.
Okay.
Which a normal job I think at the time was like $8 an hour.
Okay.
So like right out of the gate, everyone's like, that's like a really good pay for a college student.
Right.
At least at that time, that was like 2011, 2012.
Okay.
Then. And so like first of all, like before they had the first group of students, everyone was a little like, I don't know about this. And then the first group of students like told everyone else, and they were like, this is legit. This is like one of the best things that you could do, because you're then programming, you're doing your schoolwork, you're then going to work for 20 hours a week during the school year, and then you're getting paid for that, and you're like doing programming. And then usually most people did programming on the side on their own, like their own projects.
Right.
And so, for example, so when I interviewed around, I think it was like mid-October.
Okay. Sophomore year?
Yeah, no, this is beginning of my junior year. So
beginning of junior year.
Yeah.
Okay, so you went to like the spring.
Yep.
I guess it'd be the fall career fair at this point.
Yeah, so it was like the fall career fair. I didn't see it in my career fair. I was, because at that time I wasn't really looking at I wasn't interviewing for anything.
Sure.
But what happened was that people that I was in classes with was like, hey, check this out. And then I would get handed like a flyer.
Okay.
And I'd be like, oh, that's cool. I'll check it out. And then, so I applied. So when I applied, I was in the running for like 3 positions.
Okay.
And there was like 90 applicants.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. So I went in, and for me, like, the questions they asked was like basically like what I just completed. I think it was either what I just completed or what I was in midway completing.
Okay.
On that 301 class, but it was like, it dug deep into classes and like, constructors and polymorphism and overriding, overloading, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of like, what would this code output kind of stuff.
Sure.
And so when I was like going through, like I aced the technical side.
Sure.
And then in terms of like, they had some like soft questions in terms of like, oh, how do you handle in this situation?
Yeah.
And a lot of that was just like, I was previously an RA, so I was just kind of like, oh, well, I would try to mediate and stuff like that.
Right.
But at that time, I didn't have any experience, so it was all just kind of BSing and just going off of the
course
cuff.
projects and whatever you had to. Yeah.
Yeah. And just kind of going off of how I interacted with other people.
Okay.
And then I generally interview really well. Like, that's been one thing that I haven't... I mean, I've struggled with at times in my career.
Sure.
But it's not because of, like, for example, the talking to somebody else and relating to them and getting them to understand how I'm thinking and how I'm going through, that's never been the issue. It's always just been, I wasn't prepared enough. I didn't...
You didn't put in the upfront work, necessarily, or weren't aware of what you were going to be asked.
Yes.
Sure.
That and too, and like, after you've been in a career or a job for a long time, like, there's a big difference between what you do in your day-to-day and, like, what you do for an interview.
Yeah.
That's completely separate.
Depends where you're interviewing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But the vast majority of places, it's completely different.
Right.
Anyway, so I interviewed, did well, got very lucky, and got in. And
nice.
Getting that internship changed everything. Because, like I was saying before, now instead of like I'm programming for school,
right.
I'm doing some other job. Or at the time, I was actually didn't have a job, so I'd do other stuff on my own, like my own projects.
Sure.
But I don't know. There's a difference between I find when you first are starting out that like having a structured, here's a problem to solve, like that you're not solving, because you can find a problem and you can get stuck. You can go down a rabbit hole and get stuck and get frustrated, and you don't have anyone saying, hey, you gotta get that done.
Yeah.
So then you might just put it on hold or do other things in the meantime. However, having a job where all of a sudden you have people are expecting you to get this done, and then if you don't get it done, you need to then figure out how to get it done. Yeah. Whether that be you pull in somebody else you're working with to kind of help figure out where you're not understanding or where you're stuck.
Sure.
And so once I got the software consulting job, it was I was probably coding. I probably went from coding like I don't know, maybe 10 hours a week to like 30.
So you worked how many? So you worked there 30 hours a week? Or
no, so I was doing 20 hours a week during the school year.
Okay.
But it was just more of the fact that like schoolwork was maybe like 10 hours a week.
Sure.
And all of a sudden you throw in 15 hours a week of coding.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I've more than doubled how much coding I'm doing.
Okay.
And so what I noticed was that all of a sudden the fundamentals just got more rock solid.
Sure.
And then like I noticed probably like a month or two into that semester after I started. So like at that time, so I worked for them over the winter break, so December.
Okay.
So I worked for them in December, and then about late February, all of a sudden I noticed that like I was just understanding things really easily.
Okay.
Like that, like I would have a class on operating systems, and all of a sudden we were dealing with like threading. Sure. And all of a sudden it was just like, oh yeah, okay, I see how this works. Click, click. And then like the biggest like aha moment for me was I had a project where we were doing a rock paper scissors with threads. Okay. And so I was like, we were doing Java at the time, and we got extra credit, a good amount of extra credit, probably like 20% extra credit if we did a UI. Nice. And I had been doing like video game design stuff in Java. Sure. And so I knew how to do the graphics. So for my group, I was like, hey, I'll do the UI, get us some extra points. Yeah. You guys come in with the back end, and then we'll hook them up, and then we'll make it work. Yeah. Well, when my teammates showed up 2 weeks later, and they had nothing, and they go, yeah, we don't understand this. Oh, that's killer. Yeah, and then I basically, like, it was that moment of being like, okay, well, I understand it enough, so how about, we'll take my project and I'll explain it and I basically just coded for like 3 hours as I explained it to him. Or something. No, we still had like a week or two. Okay. But it was one of those moments of like, God, well, one, it was like, gosh dang it, like, I wish I would have known this sooner because I would have been able to help them, get this sooner along. Right. But it was also that moment of being like, okay, I understand it, let me try to pay it forward and let me try to explain it to them. Right. And that was... Because was there anybody, whether it's in the grade ahead of you, or like people in the labs that you found, or even at your internship that was like helping you learn these things? Whereas, like, these other people in your class were, like, probably not getting that experience. Well, so there was kind of twofold. So all the people at software consulting, we kind of got a reputation for being very good. Okay. Because I think... And it wasn't because we were better or we knew more. It was because we had more experience, more time doing programming. Okay. And I think it was more of, too, like... Let's say, let's say you have 30 people, and you take the top... or the 5 people that are, getting an interview or are able to see in that way. Yeah. All of a sudden you put them on their own little island. Yeah. And in general, most of the people that got in software were really smart, intelligent people. Yeah. And so all of a sudden, the way I view it is that those people just start leveling each other up faster. Sure. Than the rest of the people in the computer science department. Okay. So I think it was just more of... Surrounding yourself with smart people. Yeah, surrounding yourself with smart people that, are interested in things you're interested in. And then, so on top of that as well, when I was there, I started the Video Game Design Club as well. Okay. And so a lot of so when we started that, maybe like once or twice a week, we'd have a bunch of people from software consulting who were interested in video game design get together, talk about stuff, and program together.
Yeah.
And so it definitely became this group that just continually pushed each other forward.
Right.
And again, that is what I think changed and gave me so many more opportunities. Like once I got out of college, there'd be people that, I would, be talking to recruiters and they'd hear about, oh, I work for software consulting. And that was immediately like, we want to talk to you. Like, it got my foot in the door in a lot of places that I wouldn't have been able to get my foot in the door.
So, so the internship, you worked through winter break.
Yep, so
Did you work there for a summer too?
Yeah, so I worked there for 2 years and 4 months.
Okay.
So
all of junior year, pretty much.
Yeah, so I graduated in I was at school. I graduated in 6 years. That's a different story.
Okay.
But I was at school, I think, for 5.
Okay.
5 years. So I was there for 2 years and 4 months.
So junior, senior.
Yeah. So basically,
super senior. Did you have a different internship before you graduated?
I did. So I was. I basically wanted to get another internship just to kind of spread it out. And so the internship I had for software consulting was doing automated testing.
Okay.
For a company that was our client, and it was using a proprietary engine that they had built in Perl.
Okay.
And Perl is, for those that know, is a language that you can do one thing 6 different ways.
Yeah.
And it can be very hacky.
Yeah.
But I think that was also a good learning experience because, learning in that, how do I say this, in that regard, you learn to use a language.
Sure.
But then we applied a lot of restrictions on how you could use it. So that was kind of my first taste of adding a style on top of a language.
Sure. Do you feel like Perl held you back from getting other jobs, or even this proprietary framework or language stuff?
I wouldn't say that at all.
Okay.
Because I had such a good foundation in terms of C, C++, Java.
Sure.
And I'm still of the opinion that once you understand the fundamentals of computer science, you can learn any language.
Yeah.
And once you learn one language, learning another is just time using the language.
They're all the same. You're just learning the syntax and the small nuances.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It was so basically I was going to graduate in December. And so I wanted to get a different internship the summer before I graduated.
Okay.
So I left software consulting in March. And then I had a few months off, and then I did an internship for...
Okay.
And that internship was also doing automated testing. At the time, they didn't have anything there, really.
Okay.
And then... So I did that summer internship with them. That went well. I got an offer going into the... after I graduated.
Okay.
And then...
So you finished up school, went full
so,
time there?
Yeah, so there's a big actual moment that happened in my final semester of college.
Okay.
So my father went into the hospital, I think it was the end of October.
Okay.
Or end of September. I don't. Had to been end of October. So basically, he's having an issue with his jaw.
Sure.
And he ended up having cancer, and it was bad. Really bad. It was, by the time, so he went into the hospital, I think October 30th, excuse me. And then we knew, I think mid-November, that he had stage 4C cancer.
Okay.
And, that, having that happen throws a whole wrench into, trying to finish school.
Can't focus. That's all you can think about,
Yeah, can't focus, and on top of that, I was already struggling. I was in a physics class that I just last physics class I needed to graduate.
Sure.
Long story short, he ended up passing away midway through finals week, and I had to take 2 incompletes.
Okay.
So there's actually one teacher who I was doing a hardware class as an elective.
Sure.
And I told him the situation. It was on Tuesday of finals week.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, so you're not going to want to do the final now. And I was like, no, I want to do the final right, like, tomorrow at, like, 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And he was really shocked, I think.
Okay.
But I didn't want to let any of the information escape my brain because I knew if I took it right then, I'd do well.
Sure.
I ended up getting, like, 90% on it. And, like, so, but yeah, so, like, that was...
That's rough.
That was rough.
Yeah.
Like, and on top of that, I was, like, I didn't have a whole lot of money, and so I needed to start my job that I have.
Right.
Now, what's really interesting, and what a lot of people don't necessarily know, a lot of people new in the industry, if a company wants you, they will make it work. So I basically asked them, saying, hey, this is the situation. I need to take 2 incompletes, but I would like to work for you while I do that.
Right.
While I finish them up.
Yeah.
And they allowed me to do it. I would not recommend anyone else to do that per se.
Yeah.
Because I was not in the headspace to work.
Sure.
Like for a good 6 months, I was just.
Do you feel like it
mentally
helped get your head off?
No.
By going to work, or is it just worse?
It was worse. It was. I did not. I mean, I still tried hard.
Sure.
I still like did well.
Yeah.
But like.
You're probably just exhausted mentally.
Yeah, I was exhausted mentally. I didn't really care.
Sure.
Like, it was a lot of
at least
like
your worries.
Yeah, it was a lot of just like I didn't really. I was struggling.
Yeah.
For sure. And there's a lot of things that kind of went into why I was struggling, but
sure.
Yeah, it took me a long time to get closure and just kind of let it come to terms with it per se.
Yeah.
Because you know I think I was at like age 24. Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't think I was gonna have to deal with anything of that magnitude till I was like 40 or 50.
Right.
Like, like that makes you. It changes your perspective really quick, and anyway.
Yeah. It's not the first story I've heard where companies, like, if they want you, they'll wait, or they'll make exceptions.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, it's a very common thing. Or, like, I've heard people, they need one more credit.
Yep.
So they'll walk at graduation, but they won't actually get their diploma until they finish the 1 credit online. Yep. But companies will still keep their offers open.
I actually know someone who started working for a company and didn't actually graduate.
We might be thinking of the same person.
Probably, but yeah, and so like that. I would never recommend that to anyone because it will limit your options in the future if you ever want to change jobs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's possible. I don't recommend it. That, or if you are someone who doesn't feel like college is right for them, you know, you can build out a portfolio that you can show like I have the experience or knowledge that a 4-year degree would give you. So that would be probably the road I would recommend for people that aren't interested or find college very not right for them.
I also would say, like, don't be eager to finish college.
Yes.
Like, this is the last time you're gonna get spring breaks, winter breaks. Just enjoy your life. Assuming finances are obviously.
Yeah.
But like, take your time. If you fail, who cares? You make some awesome friends, have some neat experiences, try a bunch of different things, and then once you start, you're set 9 to 5.
Yeah, and that you also get accustomed to, like, for example, I'd say the vast majority of people will make a good chunk more money than they did in college or they had in college. You get accustomed to that lifestyle,
right? And
figuring out how to go back, like, that's hard.
Yeah.
Cause like, so my story, so I had a couple electives that I had to finish up. And one of them was physics, and it didn't go well, because again, I wasn't in the headspace.
Yeah.
At the time, I was trying to work, I was trying to finish school, and I was trying to deal with my father passing away.
Yeah.
It was a bad mixture of bad cocktail and time in my life in terms of, like, I had so much to do, but my head was not in the headspace to do it. So I ended up doing very poorly on a physics exam. I ended up getting very lucky in that the teacher felt sorry for me and realized, like, you don't really need this class to do your job to graduate. So he ended up giving me a C. I didn't deserve it. However, long story short, I ended up graduating. So I left school December 2014.
Okay.
I ended up graduating October of 2015.
Okay.
And yeah, it was kind of anticlimactic because I walked, like, when did I walk? I walked like the spring. I walked the spring beforehand, and so like my whole like leaving college was super weird.
Right.
But
it's like you're done, but you're not.
yeah, exactly. It was super weird, but luckily I've had a handful of people in my life and experiences that have led me to where I am today.
Right.
So, jumping back, so I was working for I was working for Pro Labs.
Okay.
Doing end-to-end testing.
Right.
Kind of building up their framework and helping them get that off the ground.
Okay.
Now, I was in a spot where
Maybe you want to explain what end-to-end testing is?
Sure. So we were writing software that would test like a website and proprietary apps beginning to end and run through scenarios to ensure that it met, like, there was no regressions in terms of like when they added and changed the code.
Okay.
So basically we wanted to ensure the quality of the software was good and we're not regressing.
Right.
Now, at the time, I wasn't aware of like automated stuff to have in JavaScript. I wasn't aware of like C# unit tests. I mean, I did a bunch of Java unit tests and library stuff.
Okay.
In college, but I didn't do a ton of it.
Right.
And so it was really funny. Like, so I worked for kind of made our proprietary thing, and then I switched to a different company, the one I'm at today, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, the way we did that was really dumb. So, like, and at the time too, it was funny because not a lot of the developers wanted to write tests.
Sure.
They wanted the automated test team to write all the tests for them.
Oh, okay.
But really, we should have just been more of like manually testing projects and helping teach other people the mindset of how to automate testing.
Because then the testing team isn't the only ones doing tests, and then you can be a lot more efficient.
Yes.
And you can move a lot quicker that way, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I ended up leaving there because I wasn't happy doing automated testing. And a part of that, too, was like I was hired as an automated tester, and it was a catch-22 because I had to do all this manual testing before I could do any automation. And then they would give me projects I had to do testing for that project, which would be even more in-depth and specific. And so it came down to like I didn't have any time in my day to, go do any of that.
Sure. So looking back, would you have taken that offer as a test engineer?
If I knew now what I know now, I wouldn't take a role as a test engineer because it's not what I want.
Sure.
I want to build things.
Sure. And
in that regard, if the company values test engineers as they should, those roles can be great.
Sure.
You're building out testing, you're coding. It's similar to regular development.
Depends on the company.
Yeah.
If you're hired for manual testing, obviously that's not what you went to school for.
Yes. Yeah. And I definitely felt underutilized.
Sure. Felt like you could be contributing more.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would also say like I did not have a good boss.
Okay.
At that company. So it was someone that was hired in after I started.
Sure. And
by the time I left once I kind of figured out that I was being lied to, kind of gaslit.
Okay.
If you know what that means. For those that don't know, being gaslighted is basically someone like tells you things or lies to you to make you think you're crazy. Or like, in this case, I think she was doing it to push me out. Okay. And I really,
You're just like done with that.
Yeah, I was just done with it. Like the thing that really like set in stone for me was like the whole year. Like we had 2 people, and one person had to get let go because he was falling asleep on the job.
Okay.
And so he got let go, and then all of a sudden it was like our team was expected to still output the same amount of work. And there's 2 engineers, right? And then when you got a contractor and they didn't work out, and they got another contractor and didn't work out. And so like you have 2 engineers, testers doing the same work that 3 or 4 people should do.
Right.
It got old.
It's just bad management, resource management.
It got old real fast, and then so all year I basically get told, "Oh, you're doing a great job. Keep going. Keep it up."
Not compensated for any of this.
Well, no. At that point it was fine.
Okay.
But what happened was after a year,
Sure.
You know, they did the whole like, oh, we're moving your year-end reviews to March.
Okay.
And then, so they did that, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, you didn't do this right, you didn't do that, you didn't do that. I'm like, okay, well, why wasn't I given any feedback during the past year? And no answer. So, the lesson I learned there was I'm never going to sign something I don't agree with.
Sure.
Again. I signed it because I was just kind of like, screw this and whatever, but I didn't agree with it. And I wouldn't sign anything I don't agree with again in the future.
Sure. When you say sign, you're saying...
It was a performance review that, like, she signed and I signed.
And this would get you a bonus or...
Yeah, and I didn't get anything because apparently I did bad. According to what she wrote out.
I kind of think they're so stupid. Like, what's the point of signing them?
It's basically saying, hey, I saw it, or I agreed to this, or... And that's the thing.
Because usually, like, when I do it, if I disagree with something, I'll put, like, here's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
My manager was not present for X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
I
was not
informed my manager at the time these things.
Yep. I was not giving feedback, blah, 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 blah.
Sure. Yeah. Like, here's all the things I did, and you can only do what's in your court. And which you have access to.
Precisely. And so for me, it was just like, I was just kind of like, screw this. And I was, after that, I was checked out. I was just like coming in, punching, doing the bare minimum, and I wasn't happy.
Sure.
So at the time, I was trying to figure out how to switch into development.
Sure.
Because I wanted to do development, even from the get-go. It was just more of like, I was hoping I could use that test role to get into Pro Labs, and then switch roles. And then, long story short, with having the issue with my boss and just not having good experience, I just left.
Were you not getting any, like, offers or, like, interviews with other companies at the time? Like, why did you decide to say, hey, okay, let's just take this chance with this test role and go with that?
So it was hard. It was very hard getting people to believe that I knew what I was doing as a developer, coming from a test engineer. And I think test engineers should be more valued than they are.
Sure.
The problem is that there's no consistency across the industry.
Right.
You know, one will be really good, one will be not as good, and one will be doing like all manual testing, one will be doing automated testing, and like there's no like, consistency.
Just the titles vary so differently across companies too.
Yes, exactly.
But what about prior to starting at? Did you have any other offers?
I didn't have many other offers, but also I was having issues with my dad's health, and so like it was
just taking whatever came first.
It was kind of like I did a little bit of digging, and I wasn't finding what I wanted.
Okay.
And you know, with that whole thing, I just kind of was like, you know, I'll accept this because I want to get into. And ideally, I was aiming to switch roles at got in the door.
Sure.
That just didn't end up working out.
Sure.
So, at the time, I had actually just started living with a mutual friend of ours that I had met through a previous person I had worked with at consulting.
Okay.
And so, started living with him. He had a whole thing with his job, and he switched roles to a new company. And he worked there for a month, and then was like, "Hey, this place is like pretty solid. Like, come check it out." And then he kind of helped me get my foot in the door there.
Sure.
And then again, though, I was getting the whole like, "Oh, we don't know. He's a test engineer." Got in the interview. They liked me. Now, what blows my mind.
So how did you convince them? Or what steps did you take to say, I'm more than a test engineer?
It was literally just he wasn't sure until he met me.
Okay.
And then he met me, and then it was like fine.
Okay.
But it was just getting into the door.
Right.
Again, like, and that's also a thing that I kind of dislike, but it is what it is.
It's not nice if you can get in the door.
I was gonna say, it's not about what you know; it's about who you know.
Yeah,
it's about getting into the door so that you can show people what you have to offer.
Right.
Now, there are even times where once you get in the door too, if you're a little bit lacking, but you know somebody and you know you fit with the team,
right?
They'll take the chance versus they wouldn't if they didn't know you.
Exactly.
And that's super kind of
It goes both ways, right? Like, you have that connection, and you're trying to get a role that you don't really qualify for. Great.
Yeah. I would also say it does go both ways, because there's a time where I was at a company where, so there's a guy at school that I was in a project with, and he tried to basically, like, so we got assigned roles for that project. It was our first, like, project where we were getting assigned, like, you're the team lead, you're the lead programmer, you're the secondary programmer, you're the lead tester, you're the secondary tester. He got secondary tester. He didn't want that role. So he tried to, like, he basically went, like, when we were doing the design phase, nearing the end of it, he just kind of goes, oh yeah, so, he calls me up. Oh yeah, so I wrote all the code for this last night and it's all working. But if you want to use it, you have to make me the lead programmer. And me as the team lead, I'm like, great. Like, this is going to end so well. So, long story short, I ended up handling it, and that actually got me an A on that project, because I handled that situation. He had to stay the same role as before, but now, I don't know how many years later, it was like 4 years later, I see him in the lobby at the company I worked for. Oh, man. And I go, oh, you're coming here for an interview? And then I immediately get to my desk, talk to my manager. My manager links me up with the manager who's hiring, and I tell him that story and tell him what happened. And I basically said, I wouldn't recommend him based on, I mean, he may have changed, but, like, definitely, like, push into the, like, team relationship, how he works well with the team questions. And he didn't get the job. So that's also a big lesson in terms of, like, be careful who you're like a dick to. Right.
Don't burn any bridges.
Yeah. Well, not to say don't burn bridges. It's just like, don't be a dick. Like, there are bridges that you can just be like, okay, well, we don't get along. Right. But people can be like, oh, I don't like him, but I respect him for whatever his skills or what he knows. And that's one thing. But, like, if you try to pull that kind of crap where you, like, you try to basically force somebody to make you a different role in your team. Right.
And then push somebody else out who doesn't really deserve it,
Well, yeah, and during the whole project, like, he pissed off everyone in our group. And he still had to do the same role at the end. Right. So, like...
Joke's on him.
Yeah. And well, no, the joke's on him for that project, and then 4 years later...
interactions with.
4 years later, I see him trying to get into my company, and I go, I don't really want him to be here. Right. Like, so yeah, be careful what you do, because you don't know when it'll affect you. Right.
And you don't know when you're going to cross paths.
And he actually probably doesn't even know that happened.
Sure.
He just didn't get it. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was an eye-opening moment for me. Okay, so then I kind of get into development. Yeah. I'm on a team that does a lot of back-end work. Okay. They don't really do any. They didn't at the time. They didn't have any newer JavaScript UI stuff, and at the time, that's really what I was trying to move into. Sure. Gain experience in that regard.
What made you want to get into that stuff?
Well, so during college, I didn't really get into it, but I did a lot of art classes. Okay. And so I was always interested in the design art side of it. And also, like, it's kind of cool to be able to build a UI that you can hook up to your backend. Right.
Gives you a little more creativity.
Yeah, well, it opens, I mean, I definitely would say, being able to do everything opens a lot of doors.
Right, being full stack.
Yeah, being full stack opens a lot of doors.
You can go wherever you want then.
Yeah. Yeah. So, at the time, my team was basically, they were pretty set in their ways. They didn't really want to change how they coded. Sure. They didn't want to do new UI stuff. And so, at that time, I came from being an associate software tester to being a software engineer. Sure. So, immediately, I come into the team and I'm like, oh, well, we should be following enterprise architecture teams, like, guidelines. Right. And right now, we're not. So it was really easy for me to go, well, we should be doing this. And I basically was able to pull from all their guidelines and say, we should be doing this, 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 and this.
It wasn't really an argument. You present them with, here's what we should be doing. Yes. That we're getting told to do.
Now, I got a lot of pushback from the devs that have been stuck in their ways for a long time. Sure.
How did you deal with that?
Well, honestly, it was one of the reasons why I ended up leaving the team.
Okay.
So at the time, I was SE1, and the company I worked for does like SE 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. SE just standing for
software engineer. Yeah. Yep. And so they basically had 1, 2, and 3, and then they have like architect, and they have other roles higher. But like, as an engineer, that was all they had, 1, 2, and 3.
Sure.
So I was software engineer 1, basically saying, hey, we should be doing X, Y, and Z, to everyone on the team that's basically above me at software engineer 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And that didn't
go so well.
Well, I mean, it went well enough. Like, I was able to basically embed enough newer tech into the team that they had to move forward.
Okay. And it probably gave you a chance to work on that stuff.
It did, because they didn't want to do it.
They didn't want to do it, so you're like, hey, I'll do it. Like, volunteer for everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
that's super nice.
That was a really... So, I would definitely say, look for those opportunities. You know, if you're new to a team, you know, look for where they're lacking.
Right.
Or where they're lagging behind. And, you know, that's a lot of times where it can help advance your career is by you coming in and basically saying, hey, this is good and all, but this is like 5 years behind technology. What about X, Y, and Z?
Yeah.
And you can propose things.
I've done that a lot. Like, even things that I'm not passionate about.
Yeah.
Like security. I've never been really passionate about it.
Yep.
I've seen through projects like places where we can improve on application security.
Yep.
And I'll bring them up with the little knowledge I have. I'm like, dude, I don't know what I'm doing from a security standpoint, but here's the things we can improve on. And I'll take on those responsibilities.
Yeah.
And at the end, it's like, okay, when my year-end review comes or mid-year review, it's like, here's the additional responsibilities I took. It helps you get promoted quicker.
Yep.
And it grows your resume at the end of the day.
Yep. So I was doing back-end work on that team, and I wanted to do more UI stuff. So I wasn't really getting those opportunities. So then at the time, I knew someone else in the company on a team that basically did solely front-end, you know, on a customer-facing website. You know, and I had previously talked to that manager, didn't end up working out at the time.
Yeah.
But then, you know, he's like, oh man, we need engineers. And so then I, you know, was like, hey, put my name out there, let me know. Like, and so then I joined that team, and then that was really where my career shifted from back end. So I went from testing, came into the new team, had to prove myself on the back end stuff, learned a lot about API stuff, you know, REST, all that jazz, and SQL databases.
Sure.
And then switched over to that side, and then started gaining knowledge on the front end. And then, like, within a few months, I gained a reputation on the team to basically just get stuff done.
Yeah.
And you know, I picked it up really quick. And so then, with that, I was given the opportunity to help work on a project that would basically define how we use React on that team.
Yeah.
Because at the time, they were using Angular 1, so AngularJS.
Sure.
And then we were basically the whole company had switched to React.
Okay.
And so then the team goes, okay, well, we have to go React. How do we do that? And then at the time, none of them on the team had done React. I came from my previous team where I had done React and Angular to just kind of test it out.
Right.
And so I come in, and all of a sudden everyone's going, what do we do? And I'm like...
You're the man.
Yeah, and then you know, so I get that opportunity where I have to then help define the standard for how we do React on this team.
Yeah.
And then because I did that project, I was given the opportunity to join a new team.
Right.
Where we basically built a new order entry screen in 10 weeks.
Okay. So you're just consistently gaining that leadership.
Yes.
Through these new opportunities that you saw and chased after. That's awesome.
Yep. And then now I will say I wasn't necessarily getting all of the recognition for being a part of for doing what I was doing.
Sure.
Because a lot of times it was like, oh, I was on this project and I was basically helping define the standards and being a driving force on that. But then there was actually like a leader of that project who got the credit. Majority of the credit.
So how did you try to navigate that? Like,
well, I didn't necessarily realize it was happening until later on.
Oh, okay.
And then, you know, when I switched over to that new team, which is the team I'm on currently, you know, a lot of that, you know, initial leadership that I was doing, like, there was an architect on the team, but he wasn't there for any of the day-to-day stuff.
Okay.
And so I was having to make decisions on what we do for day-to-day decisions.
Sure.
Like, how do we solve this problem? How do we solve that problem? And I was doing that, but I didn't get the credit for it.
Sure.
You know, the architect on the project or the tech lead on the project got the credit.
Sure.
Even though they weren't the one doing those decisions.
Sure.
And so, like, it is what it is. It's just, it's frustrating.
Do you think there's a way you could get credit for those things?
I don't really think so without me being like, oh, hey, hoity-toity, I did it. Like, no.
So,
per se, like...
You don't think writing a list of the things you've done?
I mean,
presenting that list.
I think writing those things...
Whoever.
I think writing those things, yes, like, and writing them down is good. But I don't think it would have changed anything.
When you say you get recognition, are you saying being compensated from, like, a total compensation package, like, increase? Or are you thinking more just, like, here, good job, Neil, thanks for leading this?
Both.
Okay.
I kind of both. I mean, like, because definitely if I would have been given more recognition in terms of what I did, I think it would have helped me level up into the next role sooner.
Sure.
And yeah, so.
Now you're here.
Yeah, now I'm here.
Dude, that's awesome.
But yeah, so that was kind of the long-winded how I started and where I'm at today. And yeah, right now, full stack developer. I really don't want to give that up.
Right. I wouldn't either.
Yeah, I don't want to give that up. I really enjoy doing the front end and the back end.
Right.
And yeah, I mean the things that I've noticed in my career is I've just constantly tried to learn.
Sure.
I've constantly been like, oh, okay, I don't necessarily know about this, but I was put into situations where I was kind of like, do or die.
Sure.
You're gonna survive, or you basically get thrown on the frying pan on the fire,
right.
And it's kind of that moment of like, you succeed or you don't.
Right.
And
have you been in a place where at work you're no longer learning? And like, how do you go about continuing to learn?
Yes. I've had that more recently.
Sure.
Probably in the past year.
Sure.
And for me right now, it's been more about mentoring other developers and helping teach them and helping.
Sure. So like learning how to teach more junior engineers.
Yeah.
How to get better. Different type of learning. But
yes.
At the end of the day, you're still learning and it's helping you grow.
Yeah, but the vast majority of my job right now, I'm not. I know pretty much how I need to do everything.
Right.
There's a few things where I'll be like, oh, I don't know how to do this, and then it's like, oh, I talk to this team, and then I find out, because, like setting up certain technology.
Sure.
So we can use in our projects. But yeah, like, I'm kind of at that point of, like, figuring out, like, what I want to do, per se, like, to resolve that. It's either I need to push more into learning, but that's hard at times because, like, a lot of times my responsibilities right now are solving these problems for other people and helping unroadblock people and getting software out the door and features out the door.
Right.
And so there's not a lot of time in my day to go learn new things.
Sure.
In the past, I always kind of like, I would go, oh, I want to do this. I'd go work in that technology.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I learned. And so right now I'm kind of in a tricky spot where it's like, where I want to learn new things.
Right.
So I'm probably gonna have to do that outside of work.
Sure.
Because I'm not in the position where I have time in my day at work to go.
It's very fast paced environment you're currently at.
Yes, it's very fast paced, and it's. I mean, as we said, like when I joined the project, it was creating a new order entry scheme in 10 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, that's unheard of.
All right, so it sounds like things are going good.
Yeah.
What would you say is like, if you could pick one thing that led to your success through your whole journey so far, what would that one thing be?
Surrounding yourself with people that will help elevate you and help you get to where you want to go. Because, like,
okay.
For example, like, I think it was the whole, like, the Maverick Software Install thing. Getting that opportunity and getting surrounded by other people that are smart, intelligent, and driven, that only helped me be better.
Right.
And then similar to that, like, a lot of times a lot of companies, I'm sure there's a smaller group of devs who are, like, interested in a technology like front-end development. Sure. And they'll start a little group that will meet once a week and talk about stuff.
Sure.
Find those groups, find those, like, pockets of individuals that are really passionate.
Right.
And like try to get in there because like those groups will generally only help you,
right.
you know, move forward faster.
Yeah. It's just like in college, like you were in this
Yeah.
this game club.
Yep.
And then it's the same now. You're working at a large company
Yep.
where there's lots of opportunities and people congregate around topics that they enjoy.
Yep.
Outside of their typical responsibilities.
Day-to-day, yep.
Yeah. I think it's huge. At a small company, I would say you probably don't necessarily get all those opportunities because there's a smaller group of people you can be with.
But you could be the one that creates those opportunities or creates those groups.
Right.
So like a lot of most companies I don't think will hamper you doing those groups.
Right.
Like, because if they say, oh no, don't do that, go back to your day, like your work, and you're like, okay, you don't want us to take like a half an hour to talk about things.
Right.
Like, that's not a company I want to work for.
Yeah. And I think a lot of companies, they like that because it gives the solutions come out better, more innovation, and people come up with different ideas that are going to help the product at the end of the day, which helps the business and the company.
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely agree.
Was there anything more you want to learn or pick my brain on, or?
Interviewing wise, when you were interviewing positions, is there anything that like stood out to you?
So I've been on both sides of the table.
Okay.
So for my work, I did some interviewing, and then currently I did some interviewing as well.
Okay.
And for me, a lot of it is trying to understand if someone's nervous, like if they're not confident because they're nervous, or are they not confident because they're not going to be confident.
Okay.
Like in general.
Sure.
And I mean, you need to have enough confidence in what you think. Because if you don't, it's gonna be hard to work with you. Because if I go, well, what do you think? You go, oh, I'm not sure. But it's like, okay, well,
they're not really.
That doesn't give me your train of thought. That doesn't give me. It doesn't
give you
adding
value to the team.
Yeah, you're not adding value to the group in the discussion and trying to drive it in any direction. And so, if someone is super unconfident and a little more passive, I've seen it be hard to work with them.
Sure.
And so in terms of like the members of the team that I'm looking for when I'm interviewing someone is, are they confident in their train of thought and can they explain it?
Okay.
And then in terms of that, beyond that, it's like definitely looking into their technical knowledge.
Okay. What do you look for in that?
That's a huge can of worms, but like, are their fundamentals good?
Okay. Meaning just data structures?
Like for loops, while loops.
Can write some basic
logic. Yeah, logic.
Okay.
If they can write pseudocode, like just kind of like, or like an algorithm, like, oh, I need to solve this problem. I'm gonna write out the steps it'll take for me to do.
Not something like super.
Yeah, not detailed at all. No, not
super complex.
Yeah, no, just more along the lines of like, can they take a problem, break it down, and then explain kind of the steps they need to take to solve the problem?
Sure.
Like that kind of stuff. And then for certain roles, I've also done some like system design.
Sure.
Like give me like for an app, like solve this problem. It's gonna be like an app that tracks someone's location.
Sure.
And saves it. It's like, okay, well, what are all the pieces you need? And then how do they connect and
sketch it out?
Yeah, and then you
tell me about it. Yeah.
And then you can kind of try to poke holes in it, give them different constraints as they go, and you can see how they respond to that.
Yeah. Hit them with the follow-ups, dive into a specific part of it.
Yep, and totally, if they're struggling and they're not able to move forward, it's you kind of give them a bone, help them get past it, because like most of the time, what I'm trying to get is they're thinking.
Right.
Like, what is their train of thought?
Right. That's kind of how I interview, is like really work with the candidate as if they were my teammate and work through the problem together. If they're struggling, help them out. Don't necessarily like give them the whole answer, but like slowly encourage them, give them the hints they need to work through the problem. Because at the end of the day, you don't necessarily care if they get the right answer. Just do they have the problem solving? Do they give up?
Yeah.
Do they proceed?
Yes. And I've actually noticed, like, when I'm mentoring, like, developers that are, don't have as much experience, that's kind of like how I have to work with them. Like, I have to be like, okay, how do I help them like give them like a clue,
right,
and help them, because you don't want to give them the answer because then they don't get it. They don't have that aha moment. But you want to give them enough information. And go, well, okay, well I see this, so therefore I think this.
Right.
Then therefore, what do you think?
Right.
And a lot of times they'll go, oh, well then and then they'll have that moment, and like as a mentor, seeing that, like having that moment, it's like it's like
it's exciting to see them like get the aha.
Yes, and sometimes like if you have to give them that clue,
right?
But if you're able to give them enough of a clue that they still have to work it out, or they still have to like make the connection,
right?
It's really rewarding.
Yeah,
I really enjoy that.
Yeah. Has there, being an interviewer, has anything like surprised you from a candidate? Have you like learned anything from being an interviewer?
there have actually been there's one candidate who knew more than I did in terms of JavaScript.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, dang, like, okay. So it definitely changed the interview, but the interview became a lot more like kind of jovial, and it became a lot more just like seeing what they knew and like seeing if I could poke holes in it or find holes in it. But it became much more of just like it was more of a challenge, and we just kind of like that person was much more. It was kind of like a back and forth banter.
Sure.
And so generally, I find when that is happening in an interview, like you're good. Like you're probably gonna get an offer.
Right.
Yeah.
You're going into more detailed topics. You're not staking on the surface level. Like, what's this specific operator do and stuff like that. Yeah. If you had to give 3 tips to candidates, what would you suggest?
For interviews?
Yeah. What do you see candidates struggle with the most? Maybe that's the easier question.
Well, it's not necessarily like I mean, that's again a super loaded question. There's a lot of like there's so many little nuances you could do, but like research the company. Like know the company bare minimum, because like I've had it before when I have been looking at a new role.
Sure.
And I'm talking to probably like maybe a recruiter, but I'm talking to like probably at least 3 companies or 4 companies.
Right.
It's really hard to keep them all straight.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed with that is being upfront, being like if you screw up, saying, "Oh, I apologize. Like I'm talking with a handful of companies. Let me read something real quick. Okay, let me get recentered, basically."
Just be fully transparent.
Yeah, because I've had it happen before where I thought I was talking to like one company or one recruiter, and I was talking to someone else, and I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, mistake. Like, I've been talking to a handful of recruiters.
Right.
Give me a moment," and then I kind of just looked it up. I was like, "Oh, yeah, duh."
Yeah.
And then kind of kept going. 2, I mean, be up to date with like your technical knowledge.
Sure.
It depends on the company.
And like freshen up, because it's like it's not what you use every day.
Yes, but this is also where I go. It depends on the company.
Yeah.
You have some companies that, for example, will only ask you FizzBuzz, and you have some companies like like the Big 4, who are grilling you so hard all the way down to like stuff that I haven't used since like college, and like I don't need to know.
Some companies just do behavioral, and it's a wash.
Exactly. But I'd say like be up to date with your technical ability. There's definitely like Glassdoor, and there's tools at your disposal to at least get insight into what they are going to ask you.
Right. Or just Google top 10 software engineering interview questions.
Yeah. I mean, it depends how far down the rabbit hole you want to go.
Right.
But like, I don't know. I definitely noticed in my career, like, what I do in my day-to-day does not line up with what I need to do for interviews.
Yeah.
So
know the company.
Know the company. Like, be up to date on your tech, or your technology fundamentals, and that kind of is like your technology fundamentals in terms of interviewing, because it's kind of different.
Yeah.
Practice. I would say practice, because what always worked for me was being very personable.
Sure.
And being able to relate and get the interviewer to like be on my side per se, and you're not gonna get that if you're in the interview and you're closed off and you're doing body language that you're not comfortable.
Right.
So get comfortable interviewing.
So how did you go about practicing?
I mean, luckily it came naturally to me.
Okay.
So, but I also would say like do it semi-frequently. Like I would say you should interview at least once every 2 years.
You're saying just like regardless if you're looking or not, interview somewhere.
Yes, because one, it's not a bad habit of getting yourself up to date, like for interviewing, update your resume, have everything ready, and then do an interview. Because one, it'll like some interviews you can go in being like, I don't think I'm gonna get this, but at least I can get practice.
Right.
Like, and that's the other thing too. Like, don't make interviewing a zero-sum game. Make interviewing more about like even if I don't get it, what can I learn or what can I get better at in the interview?
Exactly.
That's another thing that I definitely had to reframe or think of, or I noticed when I was doing interviews at one point. What else? So when you're also, I'd say for the practice in school, there's definitely resources at your career center.
Sure.
Get a friend.
Yeah.
Get a friend to maybe give him a list of questions and then have him ask them and interview him, or have him mock interview you.
Sure.
Have you ever done that? Like,
I'm trying to think. I've never done a mock interview through like the career center. I did I'm trying to think. There's like a Q&A session one night with some like recruiters, and they just came in and like you just shoot the questions.
Sure.
They'd give you some insight in what they were looking for, stuff like that. I've used Pramp a lot. It's like a peer-to-peer interviewing platform online. I still use that today. That's been pretty solid. Because sometimes you don't have friends, or your friends don't know programming.
True. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But yeah,
that can be tough.
Is huge for sure.
Yeah. Any other questions or?
Let's see. Oh, I had one and I forgot what it was. So transparency, know the company.
Yep. In terms of interviewing,
practice.
I mean,
refresh on your technical skills. Practice.
Yep. So another thing that we talked about before outside of this is like communication with recruiters.
That's where I was going to go.
Is key because I had a interview I had at one point where a lot of times like you talk to a recruiter and they're like, okay, we're going to introduce you to the company.
Right.
And most of the time they introduce you to like a manager, or they're like explicitly like, hey, this is going to be a technical interview.
Yep.
This one time, basically, the recruiter goes, hey, I want you to talk to this person at this company. I was not given any heads up that it was going to be technical.
Right.
In any way.
Yeah.
And at the time, I knew, like, I know React, and I know, like, C#.
Sure.
And they were asking me questions on, like, Java and Angular. So it was just like
prep at all.
So it was just like it didn't align very well, and then I didn't prepare properly. Like they were asking a lot of questions on like patterns, like factory patterns and all these kind of patterns, and I just had to I basically had to be like, well, I don't know that specifically, but this is what I think of when you. And so it was a lot of like, oh, I'm not sure about that, and
and it's all you really can do.
Yeah, and it was rough. It was really rough.
Yeah.
I got out of that one knowing I wasn't going to get an offer, or like I wasn't going to move forward. And it was funny, the email I got was, from the recruiter basically saying, oh, the guy, the guy who interviewed you was like, oh, you can tell you're very talented, but you're not the right fit. And I was just like, well, duh. Like, I almost wanted to call her back going like, you blindsided me by not telling me this was gonna be a technical interview. Now, on one hand, you should prepare ahead of time. So
is there anything you think you could have did to know that beforehand? Like, could you have explicitly asked?
I mean, yes, I could have asked, hey, is this going to be technical or not? Or, I could ask that, but like, in the past, I've had it where I was told if it was technical or not.
Sure.
So
it didn't really come across your head to think about it or ask that.
Yeah. And at the time I was having a lot going on in my life. Like, I didn't have the most time available to sit down and refresh everything, but I would have if I had known. And so that was an interesting experience.
Okay.
But it was kind of painful. I definitely would say.
Have you only got hired by recruiters that work with the company, or did you go through like a recruiting agency for any of them?
So far, it's always been someone I've known. Like, I've not
a recruiter at that company.
Well, no. Like, so far, every company that it's all been referrals.
Okay.
It's all been people I know at the company and me applying.
Wow. So then, through referrals, then does a recruiter then hit you up? Or is it just like, hey, here's a manager?
I don't really remember.
Okay.
I think it was I might have dealt with a recruiter at one of the companies I worked for, but most of the time it was direct to manager interaction.
Okay.
Yeah. I will definitely say there's a lot of this industry is one, it's smaller than you think.
Yeah.
Especially in a city area
Sure. The Twin Cities or the Midwest.
Yeah.
Sure.
I would definitely say there's people that I've worked with at one company that I see out at an event or
Sure.
I meet somebody else and they're like, oh, I know you from that. There's been a lot of that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And so I definitely would say the industry is smaller than you think. Mm-hmm. Which kind of goes back to that comment of don't burn bridge, don't be a dick.
Right.
Don't be mean or
Don't get anybody on your bad side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that can happen. You can not agree with someone, but there's
a right way to disagree.
Yeah, there's a right way to disagree, and there's a way where you can be like, well, I don't agree with you, or you can be like, I don't agree with you, fuck you,
Yeah.
There's a difference,
right?
And one's gonna get you a reputation of people don't want to work with you. So.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely the whole thing of you can be the most talented person in the room, but if you're a dick, no one's going to want to work with you. So,
right.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's all I've had.
Okay.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to tell the audience? Feel free to shameless plug, whatever you want.
I don't have anything in terms of software engineering to shamelessly plug, but I'm glad to be on the podcast, able to kind of hopefully give my perspective and kind of ideally helps guide people that are interested in the career. Some information and maybe some insights that most people only learn through experience.
Sure. Yeah.
So.
Well, really appreciate it, man. We'll probably put a link in the description with your Instagram, maybe? LinkedIn?
Probably LinkedIn.
LinkedIn?
Probably LinkedIn.
All right. So thanks for watching. If you made it this far or listening, because most of you guys are probably on a podcast, I do drop these videos on YouTube if you want to see the video format. Leave a like, subscribe, and leave an honest review of your 2 cents of what you thought of the show. And until next time, I'm your host, Hayden Wade, signing off.